Okay, hi everyone, welcome to today's session. So, for today's session, we will be talking about our live trading session. So, feel free to let me know if you guys have any requests in the chat, and we'll try and go through as many charts as we can during this time. I can still see a couple of people coming in, so we'll give about one more minute to let more people join the session before we get started. In the meantime, yeah, let me know what charts you'd like me to go through. And also let me know if you can see my screen clearly and can hear me as well. Okay, I'll see you guys in about 30 more seconds. Thanks, everyone. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So as per usual, a disclaimer and risk warning. This information is not considered as investment advice or recommendation, but instead a marketing communication. Our products are traded on margin and carry a high level of risk, and it is possible to lose all your capital. These products may not be suitable for everyone, and you should ensure that you understand the risk involved. Okay, I'm Melanie, and I'll be a speaker for today. I'm an investment analyst at Rocket, who were finalists for Best FX and Equity Research in the years 2019 to 2021. Okay, now let's go ahead and get started. So before we take a look at our charts, let's just do a brief recap of the events that have happened for this week. Let's start with Monday. Okay, so I filtered it to focus on mainly the medium to high impact events, indicated by these orange and red icons. Of course, you can also select on this filter button and look at any lower impact events. If you click on this yellow icon, you can filter out any event types that you're not looking at or any currencies that you're not trading. We typically just prefer to look at all of them. And you can see there are a lot more events to cover if we also look at the low impact events. Okay, so that's why we just like to focus on the medium to high impact. Okay, so Monday there were no events. Now on Tuesday we had US FOMC member Waller speaking, monetary policy meeting minutes from Australia, UK's climate count change, average earnings index 3-month on year data, which came out to be lower than forecasted at 5.6%. Euros German ZEW economic sentiment, Canadian inflationary data, we have CPI data release, all of which came out to be lower than forecasted, except for the median, which remained the same. Okay, and then for US, we have the Empire State Manufacturing Index as well. And on Wednesday, we have China's GDP quarter-on-year data, which came out to be higher than forecasted at 5.4%. We also have China's industrial production year-on-year data, retail sales year-on-year data, both came out to be higher than forecasted as well. We also have UK's CPI data, which dropped slightly to 2.6%. And we have US core retail sales data, Canadian BOC monetary policy report, rate statement, overnight rate remained the same at 2.75%. On Thursday, Fed Chair Powell spoke again, and New Zealand's CPI data was released, slightly higher than forecasted at 0.9%. Australia's employment data was released as well, employment change and unemployment rate, which dropped slightly to 4.1%. Euro's main refinancing rate, monetary policy statement, all these are coming out today, and unemployment claims, Philly Fed Manufacturing Index, and Euro's ECB press conference. And lastly, on Friday, tomorrow is Good Friday, so these are all of the bank holidays. Okay, now let's take a look at our charts now. Let me just pull out my charts. Okay, you guys should be able to see my screen now, or any moment now. We'll start off by looking at DXY. Okay. So on our weekly time frame, okay, I'm gonna switch my camera off because it's kind of lagging, and you don't really need to see me anyway. If you guys can hear me, then it's fine. Okay, so on our weekly time frame, on our DXY, you can see prices generally dropping. Now on our daily time frame, prices dropping as well. Okay, so let's go in and place our first resistance and first support levels. Okay, I might place my first support way down here at this swing low here. Okay, if you want, you can also place an intermediate support level where price is currently at. Okay, and now I'm going in with my Fibonacci levels. I'm first starting with a Nike tick Fibonacci extension. Okay, you can see that first support lines up pretty nicely with our 127. Now let's go in with, we can place another second support in line with that 161.8. And it's also in line with this overlap level here. Okay, so this is my second support. So I'm just going to keep that 127 and the 161. So if you're unfamiliar with what this Nike tick strategy is, it's basically this, like I mentioned, Nike tick shape. Here it's an inverted Nike tick. Okay. Obviously if it's upright, it would look like that, just a normal tick. So this is inverted, and the levels that we look at are greater than 100. So we have the 127 and the 161 that we normally look at. Sometimes we might also look at the levels in between, so like the 138, and the 14 something, 141 I think, 145. Yeah, with some Sometimes we look at 141 or 145 or 138 as well, but it's mainly focused on these two levels. Okay, so now I'll go in with our Fibonacci extension as well. Sorry, projection, which uses the Fibonacci extension tool. So that might be a little bit confusing, but it's basically this tool that allows you to use 3 points. And it's called the trend-based fib extension, but we like to call it a projection because we're basically projecting where we are expecting prices to head towards. So here you can see our 161 lines up with the intermediate support or where price is currently at. Our 200 lines up quite nicely with the first support and 261 as well. So I'll keep both of those levels. Okay, for this, we normally like to focus on the 61, 61.8, 78.6, and 100%. But you can also look at other levels as well. That's not an issue. Okay, 127 price has already broken out of that level, so I'm going to remove that. So we just have these three levels here. Okay, and actually for my first support, I might um move it a little bit higher. Okay, so that we give price a bit of room to breathe, and we don't get stopped out immediately because we might see a little bit of reversal over here. I think right now you can already see price kind of reacting off of this support level a little bit. Yep. So you're just giving it some room to move around. Okay, so I'm expecting prices to continue to drop. This first support, second support, I'm just labeling it as a support level, but of course you can label it as as your take profit or as your partial profit. Yep, that's up to you. We're just basically identifying levels that you can use or quite significant levels um on our chart that are near price right now. Okay, so I'm highlighting our first support because here we have a Fibonacci confluence area where two or more Fibonacci levels are lined up. So this tends to attract price, but price might not be able to break out of it. So that's why I'm highlighting it, just so you are careful of this area here. But I'm expecting prices to continue in this downtrend. Okay, and of course, this is just technical analysis. We're not focusing right now on the fundamental analysis, so make sure that you do keep an eye out for any more announcements from the central bank, which might cause additional fluctuations in your charts, especially during this period. Okay, now let's pull out some indicators to support our analysis. So here we have prices moving below the Ichimoku cloud, which is giving us a bearish signal. MACD as well, you can see, is giving us a bearish signal there. Okay, now let's pull out some other indicators as well. So I like to use those two first because at one glance you can tell exactly what the signals are. Let's now look at EMA, SMA, and SA. Okay, you can see prices moving quite strongly below all three of those indicators as well. So that supports our analysis as well. Now we look at Bollinger Bands. Here you can see price pushing below that lower band. So that is also giving us a quite strong bearish signal. Now let's look at RSI and stochastic. So these are our momentum indicators. So let's see. I think RSI is giving us a descending trend line here. So this is also a downtrend. If you look at stochastic, it's actually moving a bit into the oversold regions there. So basically the levels, just in case you are unfamiliar with how to use RSI or stochastic, if it moves below this dotted line, it is oversold. It's an oversold region. If it moves above this line, it's an overbought region. So here you can see our indicator is moving a bit into that oversold region. So you might see a bit of a rebound, which is why I mentioned I want to give it room to move around. That's why I moved my first resistance up a little bit, so that we prevent price from getting stopped out. Okay, so we have some room for it to move around. Let me just draw what I'm talking about. So we might see it reverse a bit before it continues to drop. Okay, that's why this room in between here is important, so that there's space for it to move instead of just getting stopped out immediately. Okay, especially now that with our indicators, it shows that prices are kind of moving towards oversold regions. Okay. Okay, that's for DXY. Any questions? No? Okay. I'm gonna move on and look at gold now, since DXY and gold tend to be inversely correlated. So here we see DXY dropping. Let's take a look at gold now. Yeah, let me save my chart. Okay. Okay. So same thing, we're looking at our higher time frames first, and you can see prices generally moving in an uptrend. Yeah, so you can actually compare DXY and gold on the same price scale. So earlier we saw DXY dropping, here we see gold in that opposite direction. Okay, of course this is dependent on geopolitical factors as well. It's just that typically we can expect them to be inversely correlated normally. Okay, so on our weekly time frame, prices are moving upwards. Daily time frame, we see that same trend as well. Let's see if we have any trend lines first. Yeah, we have an ascending trend line here. Okay, and I'm gonna place the first resistance over here. And the first support, just at this pullback level here. Okay, now I'm going in with my Fibonacci levels because you can see we don't have any previous levels for reference for our first resistance. Okay, so I'm gonna place our second resistance at the 127 level, and this will be my second resistance. Okay, I might actually label this the second resistance, first resistance here, and then this as our pivot. Okay. Mm, Okay, here I have the 161.8 lining up with my first resistance as well. Okay. I'm also gonna go in with a Fibonacci expansion. Okay, no. Okay, let's see if there's any levels here. The 61 to 100 line up nicely. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go in with an expansion here. Okay, you can see that minus 27.2 and the 61 also line up. Okay, so I'll keep both of these levels. Okay, so you can see where price is at now. That's why I've labeled this as a pivot, because we might see a bit of a reversal here at our pivot level. Okay, so we make sure that there's enough room here. You can place your first support at this level instead if you want to make sure that there's enough room for it to move around. In that case, I think we might have another retracement that lines up with our first support. Yep, the 50%. Okay. Um, yep, so I'm expecting prices to continue in this uptrend. Um, Again, like I mentioned before, you can go in for a partial profit first resistance and then take profit at your second resistance, or you can just put a profit level at your first resistance and then wait for it to break out before going in for another buy to your second resistance. That's entirely up to you, or you can just ignore the first resistance. I'm just giving you more options with these levels. Okay. But just be careful of this pivot level. You might see a bit of reversal before it continues moving upwards. So you want to make sure there's enough room for it to move around. Let's take a look at our indicators and see if they support this analysis. Okay, your prices are moving above the cloud, so it is giving us a bullish signal. MACD you can see is also giving us a bullish signal. Now let's look at Bollinger Bands. Bollinger Bands, you can see prices pushing above that upper band, so that's also a bullish signal there. Okay. Um, Next, let's look at our moving averages. Okay, you can also see, okay, I can hide the Bollinger Band first so it's clearer. Prices are moving above all three of those indicators, so that also gives us a bullish signal. And lastly, our momentum indicators again, RSI and stochastic. Okay, you can definitely see them moving into the overbought regions again. So just be careful of that. Um, let's see if we have a trend line here. Okay, we actually have a trend line on the RSI here. But not so much on stochastic. Okay, so I'm gonna remove that. Okay, so just make sure that you are um aware of this confluence area here. Also, prices moving into the overbought region, so you might see a bit of reversal there. Okay, so now you can expect a bit of reversal, so when it happens, you won't panic sell, or anything like that. Any questions? Do you guys use any other indicators apart from those I'm using? And you want me to maybe look at them? I'm not sure if I know how to use all the indicators, but we can look at them together as well if you want. Okay, are there any other requests for any charts you guys want to see? I think now we can move into the currency pairs. So let's maybe start off with our Aussie dollar. Okay, so Aussie dollar recently has had a bit of a rebound. Okay, there's a request for Kiwi dollar. So let's go ahead and look at Kiwi dollar instead. So Aussie dollar and Kiwi dollar are quite closely related. So I don't mind just looking at Kiwi dollar instead if there's a request for it. Okay, in fact, you can compare the two like what we did earlier. Okay, you can see how similar. The pink line chart is Aussie dollar, and then the candlestick chart is of course Kiwi dollar. You can see they are very similar in are very strongly correlated. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Kiwi dollar now. So same thing on our weekly time frame, we have prices moving upwards, daily time frame as well. So I'll place my first support here. Yeah, and then I'll place a first resistance maybe over here. Okay, so this is our first resistance and first support. I'll maybe pull it back all the way here. Okay, so now let's go in with our Fibonacci levels again. So I'm starting off with a normal retracement. You have 50% and 61 lining up. I'm going to keep that 50% because it's where price is currently at. We can, yeah, I'll just add a intermediate resistance here, just for reference. And then if you zoom in, you can also see that Nike takes shape. So I'm going in with a extension now. So my 127 lines up with the intermediate resistance, and the 161 lines up with the first resistance. Okay, I'm also going in with our projection here. Okay, my 161 lines up, the 127 as well. So I'm just going to keep those two levels. Okay. So here you can see we have quite a big confluence area. It's also an overlap level, so just be careful of this area. But I'm expecting prices to continue pushing upwards. Okay. Um, let's see if we have any other Fibonacci levels. I think that's it. Oh, I think we might have just a normal retracement here as well. Okay, and you can see the 23 lines up as well with our first support. Okay, now I'm going in with indicators again. Um, for MACD, prices are giving us a bullish signal. What happened to the Ichimoku? Oh, here. And we can also look at Bollinger Bands. Okay, prices are moving above the cloud, so that's giving us a bullish signal as well. Prices are pushing above that upper band on our Bollinger Bands, so that's also a bullish signal. Okay, so both support our analysis. Now let's look at EMA, SMA, and SAR. Why is it taking a while to load? In the meantime, let's look at RSI and stochastic. Okay. Is it my Wi-Fi? No. Okay, let me refresh the page. Okay, it's working now. So prices, you can see, are moving above all three EMA, SMA, and parabolic SAR. So that's bullish as well. So like I mentioned, you might see a bit of a resistance at this intermediate resistance, and you can see prices kind of giving us a bit of a bearish candlestick there. Okay. Yeah. Now, if we look at stochastic, it's also moving into the overbought regions. So this matches our analysis. But we also, oops, I think we also have an ascending trend line on the RSI. But let's see. Yeah. Okay. So that's also a bullish signal. And it's not really moving into the oversold regions yet on our RSI. But on stochastic, we did see a bit of that. So just be careful around this area. We might see a bit of a reversal before continuing upwards. Okay, that's often the pattern with these confluence areas, which is why I like to highlight them to you guys. Okay, and the reversal can be quite big as well. So I know I've been drawing quite a small arrow um, for the reversal, but you want to make sure that there is enough space between your stop loss and where price is currently at. Okay, that's for Kiwi dollar. Any questions on this? If not, let's move on to dollar franc. Okay, so dollar franc, we can see prices dropping quite significantly on our daily time frame as well. Okay, so I'll place a first resistance up here. Um, okay. So my first resistance will be up there, and I'm going to place a intermediate support level just at where price is currently at. Or maybe I'll just label it as a pivot. And for my first support, because there are no lower levels of reference, so I'm going to pull out our Fibonacci extension here, and at our 161, I'll place our first support there. At our pivot, you can also see that it's in line with the 138, so I will keep the 138 and 161. Okay, similarly, I'm going to go in with projection as well. And in our projection, you can see the 127 lines up. I might keep that 161 as well, just as a second support. Again, this is just more options since we're doing this analysis on the daily time frame. So I'll keep the 127 and the 161 here. Okay. Next I'm going in with just a regular retracement. My 23 lines up with the first resistance. And now another expansion. Okay, my minus 61 does line up, so I'm just gonna keep that. So what I just did with the minus 61, the shape that you're looking for expansions is very similar to the projections. So oftentimes when you're using projections and it's a lightning bolt shape, okay, like this zigzag shape. So oftentimes when you are using Fibonacci projection, which is this tool here, you can try to use this negative levels technique as well, which we call the Fibonacci expansion. Okay. Yeah, for this we use negative levels, like I mentioned, the minus 27 and minus 61. Okay, so here I'm expecting prices to continue to drop. Okay, and going in with our indicators again. Let's look at cloud and MACD. Prices moving below the cloud, so it's a bearish signal. MACD giving us a bearish signal as well. Bollinger Bands. Here you can see prices also pushing below the lower band. So that's also a bearish signal. Especially when you see this kind of Bollinger squeeze over here. Right, that's typically a signal that prices are either gonna break below it by quite a bit, like what we see here, or above. Oops. Okay, sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button. Okay. Yeah, so let's look at EMA, SMA, and SAW. Prices moving below all three of those indicators. So that's fine. And lastly, of course, our momentum indicators. Okay, here it's moving in a descending trend line as well. Um, But now both of the momentum indicators are showing us that prices are moving into the oversold regions. So again, we might see a bit of rebound there. Okay, at our pivot. Okay. Any questions? If not, let's go ahead and look at our last chart for today. Dollar CAD. Okay, so on our weekly time frame, oh, it's still laggy. Okay, let me switch it off. Okay, on our weekly time frame, we have prices generally dropping. On our daily time frame, generally in a downtrend as well. I think we might even have a descending trend line, trend channel. Yeah. Okay, so for valid trend channel, just to recap, it needs to have at least two touches at the top and two touches below. Okay, so my first resistance will be up here, and then first support, maybe here, because it's in line with mini levels. First support, and then a second support. Okay, I'm not gonna bother with a second support. I'll place my second resistance up here. Okay, because our first support is still quite a distance away from where price is currently at. Okay, now going in again with Fibonacci levels. Um, 61 lines up, so I'll just be keeping that. Here I have a Nike tick again, inverted Nike tick. My 161 lines up nicely. Okay, this is the Nike, oops. This is the inverted Nike tick shape. Yeah, I think that's all the Fibonacci levels we have here. Yeah, I think so. But again, we might have a bit of resistance here because this is quite a big confluence area. Yeah, so you can already see prices kind of reacting off this level a little bit. Now let's look at our indicators once again. Okay, prices moving below all three EMA, SMA, and SA, moving below the cloud, giving us a bearish signal on MACD as well. Bollinger Bands also giving us a bearish signal. You can see prices pushing below the lower band. Okay, so I'll support our analysis. Let's look at RSI and MACD. RSI, think prices are moving in a descending trend line again. Yeah. MACD, stochastic is not really, and it's also moving into the oversold regions. So again, expect a bit of a reversal here. Okay. Okay, we have one more request, so I'm just gonna very quickly go through it. But does anyone have any questions for dollar CAD here? So, oh, yes. So I'm expecting prices to continue towards our first support. But you can already see it kind of reacting a bit off the first support. So just be a bit careful there before it continues down. Okay, make sure the second support, the second resistance, I mean, you give it enough space so that you don't get stopped out. Okay, now let's look at WTI. Okay, so on our weekly time frame, we have prices generally dropping. Oh, there's been a recent reversal. Slight bounce over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and place our first resistance here. And then my first support, or like I'll label it as the pivot. Pivot and first support just here. Or maybe here. Okay, here I'm going in. Oh, there's a downtrend here. Mm, okay, I'm gonna put a second resistance up here because first resistance is quite close to price. Okay, I'm gonna remove this descending trend line because it might be a little bit confusing since we are generally following trend and here it's giving us a bit of an uptrend. But also let's look at our indicators to see what they say. Okay, it's all pretty bearish. Hmm. Okay, Bollinger Bands aren't really telling us much. EMA, SMA, SA. You can see prices recently crossed above it. So that is giving us a bullish signal. But Ichimoku and MACD are both giving us bearish signals. Okay, I think prices are going to continue upwards. Okay, even if not so much above to the second resistance, I think it will continue towards our first resistance and then it might reverse back down to our first support because there is quite a strong downtrend here. You can see the descending trend line from our Ichimoku, from MACD, and all that. Okay, so we'll keep an eye out on EME, SMA, and SA as well because you can see prices only recently crossed above them, so there's still it's not enough to tell us a trend. Okay, let's look at our Fibonacci levels. Okay, 78 lines up. Okay, this is not telling us anything. Let's look at um projection. Okay, 100% lines up exactly at our pivot. So I'm gonna use 100 and also 161. Okay, so actually I would wait for prices to continue towards the first resistance and then see if it reverses off the resistance or it continues towards the second resistance. If it reverses off the first resistance, then you know that the downward pressure is quite strong and it's going to continue pushing it downwards to a first support. If it breaks above the first resistance, then you know that it's going to continue to the second resistance. Okay, because like we've seen from our indicators right now, it's still a bit of a transition period for both Bollinger Bands, the EMA, SMA, and SAW. So honestly, now looking at our momentum indicators, I don't think they are really telling us much as well. You can see there isn't really a clear trend. It's kind of just moving in between. It's not telling us whether it's oversold, overbought. There isn't really, yeah, a trend or a signal here. Okay, so I will wait for prices to either break above or below this first resistance. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that's not really a very clear um strategy. I mean, it's not really telling you whether to buy or sell, but yeah. I I think right now we can't really tell as well from this chart and from our indicators as well. It's not very clear. Okay, if there are no other questions, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys found the session helpful. Have a great rest of your week. Have a happy long weekend. And yeah, I will see you guys again soon next week. Thanks everyone. Bye. Bye everyone. Thanks guys.